with your buddies. Let's go. Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are so glad you are here with us, and just by showing up today, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I'm pleased to feature two of the busiest, most connected, and effective music executives in the entire industry. I promise you will leave today smarter and more inspired than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And please ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the interview itself. And please make sure your chat is set to address speakers and attendees, everyone, in other words. I want to thank our sponsors for their support. Without it, we could not keep this free. Special thanks to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Tennessee Brew Works, Project Music, and Cushmaster's brand of CBD products. Also want to introduce a brand new sponsor to our lineup, MedJet. MedJet is the top-rated medical transport and travel security program for people who travel extensively. Also, a special shout out to my good friend David Hazen for helping pull together another dream team pairing of guests. Thank you, David. I appreciate all your help. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome, well, I've got the wrong script up here. Forgive me, guys. We invite Sharon Tapper. And let me now pivot to this. Sharon is the owner and founder of Pivot Music Group. Formerly, she was SVP of Music and Publishing at Razor and Tie Music Publishing and VP of Creative at Cobalt. In 2008, she was elected and currently serves on the New York chapter of the Grammys and has served multiple terms as governor and secretary, and currently serving her 6th term as co-chair of the New York chapter advocacy committee. In 2019, Sharon was elected to serve on the New York chapter of the Association of Independent Music Publishers. 10 years ago, she co-founded the New York City creative community called NYC3. And most recently, she was appointed as acting executive director of the Music Managers Forum US. Welcome, Sharon. So glad to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
And joining Sharon as today's featured guest, we are thrilled to welcome Sean Peace. As founder and CEO of Songvest, Sean is a visionary in the music business and a successful entrepreneur who drew from a strong background in tech and finance to create the company. After a chance encounter with a songwriter friend about how to sell their publishing catalog, Sean thought fans might pay more than investors to own music rights, creating the original Songvest in 2007 to sell royalties as memorabilia, before crowdfunding catalogs, sales, or royalty advances ever existed. He was doing it before it was cool. In 2011, he went on to found Royalty Exchange, the first online market to buy and sell music royalties through auction from 2011 until he sold it in 2015. In 2020, his long-term vision for Songvest became realized as he began developing a groundbreaking new model selling fractional shares where fans can invest and get paid royalties by owning shares in individual songs. In fall of 2021, the company had its first public securities offering of music royalties with qualification by the SEC utilizing Reg A+. Please welcome these two rock stars to the smartest people in the room. Please take it away, Sharon.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much for having us here. And Sean, it's lovely to see you and talk with you again. We've got to know each other a little bit during this time, and I really enjoyed getting to know you.
Same here, same here.
So you're obviously a serial tech entrepreneur. and you seem to contain this hybrid of both technology and coding, but also with sales and business skill. And that's hard to have within one person. And, you know, that's inspiring to see that you're able to move in both spaces. You're a bit of a tech nerd who seems to be able to fix the inefficiencies within our industry. What got you on this path?
Yeah, so thanks and thanks for allowing me to participate in this event. Yeah, I guess it all started a long time ago. I mean, I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit all through high school and college. But it really all started at a weird camp called Duck, which was Duke University Computer Camp. So that's what turned me on to technology. We started with these little TRS-80s which were Radio Shack computers, if anyone even remembers Radio Shack, and a little cassette tape, and that's where I first learned to program. And then my father was an airline pilot, and so he had a lot of time off, and he didn't like that I knew more than he did about technology. So he started to learn about computers and eventually opened up a little computer consulting company. So I've been in technology and programming, you know, since high school, really.
So you and your father, so where did you grow up? Where were you raised?
I grew up just outside of Raleigh in a little town called Henderson. Actually, I spent a couple years up in Chicago, so I feel like I'm a Southerner, but not really a Southerner. Like, you know, I don't like grits, and I don't like some other things that people just grow up with in the South. But yes, and I used to drink unsweet tea. You know, we can only drink sweet tea down here in the South. So it was a bit of a transition, a bit of an accent that I got from having a Southern accent. But yeah, I would say I'm a native here of North Carolina now. Went to UNC Chapel Hill, go Heels, nice win over Duke, and so I've stayed here ever since. Got to travel a ton in some different jobs that I had, but really a North Carolina native.
Now, when your father was flying for Delta, where was he hubbed out of?
Everywhere. So Chicago initially, which is why we were there, then Atlanta, Salt Lake. He might have even done a stint in San Francisco, maybe, but a little bit everywhere. And they you know, they commute. So airline pilots don't necessarily have to live in where their hub is. You know, they'll just non-rev to, you know, Atlanta or Chicago, and then start their trips from there.
So he was, I mean, he was a pilot. He was obviously very smart technically. You obviously inherited some of that from him. It sounds like you were competitive in your tech chops.
Yeah, I think early on, you know, he didn't like that I knew a little bit more than he did. So he always had to raise the bar a little bit. And then, you know, after school, we actually worked together and in the computer consulting world. And that was you know, as you can imagine, working with your father, that was fun. Not really, but anyway, we had a good relationship. Definitely learned a lot.
Now, so you were in this computer camp, about what age was that? So that was your first experience of getting to know coding or learning about coding.
I can't remember exactly when it was, maybe 6th grade, something like that, 7th grade. So still very early on.
And you then took that and worked at your father's company, his computer company, is that right?
Yeah, you know, we did a couple different things. Probably the biggest thing is for some reason, and I'm still not sure why, I came up with a concept called the teacher notebook in college. And it was basically what you have like an iPad today. And because we knew some folks that were in the artificial intelligence world, the concept there was, and George Bush had just released the curriculum objectives, that every teacher is basically their own person trying to teach a curriculum goal. So why can't we kind of take all the teachers and the best of what works in education and share that to every single teacher throughout the country, and do it in a way that's in a pen-based, computer tablet, that would help them manage their classroom better. CRM tools were just coming on board then. And so we tried to raise a ton of capital, or tried to raise capital, to get that rolled out in North Carolina. And during that process, I went and met with a local company here called SAS, and eventually went to work for them because they were building a school. And I started to work for them to help program education software for the school. So after being an entrepreneur for a long time, I was like, a real full-time job isn't necessarily a bad thing. And then I stayed there for like 13 years. So that kind of gave me a big company kind of a background.
Now, you mentioned when we were speaking, there was a teacher at your college that really was that lightning rod for you getting into the marriage of music and tech. So what was that class? Who was that?
Yeah, so I met, it was actually one of my teachers. She was a graduate student, and she, we reconnected again several years later, and it turns out she became a really famous songwriter. So she had written songs like "I Hope You Dance" and Kenny Wayne Shepherd, "Blue on Black," and various other songs. And so it really intrigued me to find out what she was doing, and how she made a living. And at one point she said, maybe someday I'll sell my catalog. And I went, "Sell a catalog? What does that mean?" And so being inquisitive, asked a whole bunch of questions about how you would do that and who you would sell it to. And as I was going through that learning process, kind of the light bulb went off that said, it seems to me that someone outside of the music industry would probably pay a lot more to own a piece of a song than just someone in the industry who's looking at it purely from a financial standpoint. Who wouldn't want to own a piece of a song, right? It seemed like a no-brainer to me. And at that point, I started to learn a lot more about the music industry. Probably one of my best, I would say, and he probably doesn't even know this, but one of my best mentors was Bart Herbison. So I was able to meet Bart, and he just was the kindest, just individual. And then after that, we had to figure out how to do assignments, so, ASCAP and BMI weren't too happy, much less, record labels to even allow an assignment. Especially ASCAP, like we had to jump through all these different hoops. Like we thought about, well, maybe we need to start a nonprofit because you can, assign your royalties to a nonprofit. So, we were like trailblazing all these different things to figure out if we could even create a company that allowed someone to buy and sell music royalties. So that's where the catalyst came from. Do what?
You're so ahead of the curve. This is what yes, you're securitized, so that's obviously a little different from NFTs, but that's kind of what NFTs during the pandemic were. It was getting that ownership of many, not just the song, but it really was your trailblazing this. I have to ask, who was the teacher? You mentioned this person who was your teacher. What
yes. Yeah, her name is Tia Sillers. So she's still down in Nashville. In fact, I think she's for the first time, I was looking on her Instagram feed, and I think she's going to perform for the first time on her own as an actual artist. So super excited to see if that's going to be a new career for her. But phenomenal songwriter. Prolific on rock and country and crossover pop with "I Hope You Dance." Just a wonderful individual.
I think she's in the Nashville Songwriter Hall of Fame.
Yes,
she
is.
She was your teacher?
Yeah, so it was a communications class, and
Wow.
came in, and she was just a bundle of energy, incredible person. And that was before, that I knew she was going to be a songwriter. So when she got out of school, I remember, we kept in touch for a while, and she was starting to write, and she would go to the Bluebird. Like, that was her first big thing, was going to the Bluebird and being able to, I guess I've never been there myself, but being part of all of, but being part of all of those songwriters and getting to sit in with them. And so early on, I got to watch her kind of start that journey.
Wonderful. So she really laid the foundations for your journey into music, because it was all tech really up until that point.
Yeah, exactly. I was not in the music industry at all. So again, why do entrepreneurs do things? I have no idea, right? Why does lightning strike and you go, oh, this sounds like a good idea? Well, do you have any music background or music experience? No, I've got none. Has anyone ever done, or like, are you making something better? Has anyone ever done? No, no one's ever done this. Well, I don't know. I mean, why do you do it? I don't know why I do it. It was definitely really weird. I mean, to call up ASCAP and go, hey, can we do an assignment? And them telling you, no, you can't. I'm like, well, you should be able to, so let's figure this out.
Well, hold on a second. Why?
Yeah, exactly. So it was very interesting.
Now, you're best known, obviously, for being the founder of Royalty Exchange, but during our conversation, Songvest came first, right?
It did. So, we knew we couldn't create a security even back then. So what our legal kind of settled on is they could go, well, you could do memorabilia with a paycheck, is what we called it. So what you got was this awesome, like, gold record with handwritten lyrics, and that was the tangible piece. That's really what we were selling. And then we could say, well, and in addition to that, you would get a very small percentage of the songwriter share, because mostly what we were dealing with were songwriters. The issue with that particular company was scalability, because where we saw it really work was with Michael Sweet of Stryper, because he was the artist as well as the songwriter. So we got to see firsthand, that's a Christian rock group. And that's where I really saw the catalyst of the fan kind of engagement around wanting to own a piece of a song, because, like, we sold a brand new song from Michael Sweet that they only had the instrumental, like there wasn't even lyrics to it, or maybe there was some lyrics, but still the song wasn't even out yet, and people bought that song. Yeah, and so the issue that we had though was, people didn't want to buy, Preston Glass's version of Miss You Like Crazy. They wanted Natalie Cole to be selling it, and they didn't know back then about songwriters, that they're such a key component of music, the music that they hear. And so without the artist being involved, and back then, 2005 to 2007, that was still the heyday. Artists were still making a ton of money, so there wasn't a lot of interest in going, oh, okay, well, why do I want to, sell part of my anything on Songvest? So that's what transitioned into Royalty Exchange. I didn't want to let go of Songvest and the ethos of what it was about for fans. So that's why we started a brand new company, Royalty Exchange, because I had all of these songwriters that still wanted to sell. So I said, okay, well, there is no efficient marketplace in which to sell music royalties, so why don't we create one? And that's why the two were separate. I always had Songvest kind of kept to the side because I knew I wanted to do kind of this fan engagement piece.
But it's almost as if you hadn't have taken that journey with Songvest, Royalty Exchange wouldn't have, it was part of your evolution. So you had to do one to get to the next. So it's wonderful that you're now, back up the beginning, so to speak, and now that is on the rise, and that you're putting their energy into that now. And it's such and again, you were 15 plus years too early.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
Well,
love that you did
and
that.
even at, yeah, and even at Royalty Exchange, we tried it, right? We looked at securities laws. We created an asset-backed security at one point, and but only accredited investors could invest in it. So it really wasn't until kind of as we were selling the company that the Jobs Act was coming out, and the changes in crowdfunding regulations around SEC rules. And that's really what has enabled us now to be able to do fractionalized share or fractionalized selling of music royalties. So that's, even we just couldn't have done it back then because the SEC laws were just not there to make it happen. And believe me, we tried. Spent a lot of money on lawyers trying to figure it out, and it wasn't doable.
Well, again, you laid the foundation for this whole other sector of the industry, really. I mean, through your efforts, it's like that's what you did. Striper, how did Striper enter your life? I remember that.
So one of the things that you do if you know nothing about music is network and try and talk to everyone that you can about music. So the guys at Deep South Entertainment have been here forever. And so we reached out to them, and it was through their connections, because they had managed several bands and even a record label, I think. And so they're the ones that got us connected with Striper, because they managed them at that time, or they may not have managed Striper, but they managed Michael Sweet. I couldn't remember one or the other. And Dave Rose runs Deep South, and same thing, just an incredibly super nice guy. Helped me out a ton over the years, and especially during the formative years of Songbest.
It's all about North Carolina, isn't it?
It all comes back to North Carolina. Everyone's like, so are you in Nashville, Atlanta, New York, LA? Where are you? I'm like,
well,
oh, Raleigh, the music financial hub of the country.
Of course.
This is where
Did
it
you
all
not
happened.
know it was the next Music City?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, why not?
Obviously.
I mean, we do have, so I will do another shout out. So Jed Carlson as well started Reverb Nation. So Reverb Nation is here locally. Same thing, right when Reverb was starting, Jed and I would meet, and we actually tried to do some partnerships with Songbest early on. So there's some local folks here that kind of had that a music technology spin as well.
It sounds like you're a real community for one another, and feeding off of one another's experiences and supporting and advising, and that's such a cool community that you got around you.
Yeah, it's not been bad. We have a nice little entrepreneurial community here. Not so much. Finally, we're getting some funding sources, but it's not like I would say the hardest thing in the triangle, we call it the research triangle area, is that we just don't have the venture capital and seed capital or growth capital that you would find if you were out in Silicon Valley. That's the biggest dig for our region, is just access. And it's gotten, of course, exponentially better, but it's still it's not as big as we would like it to be.
Well, you've built it, and people are starting to come to you now, so that's always nice.
Yeah, well, thanks. And you've had a very nice career. You started over in the UK, right?
I did. I used to work at Sound Studios for Trevor Horn, and I won my green card in the lottery. I never expected to be living in America, but next year will be my 30th anniversary of living here, and
awesome.
I couldn't imagine living anywhere else now. I just love it here, and I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've had by living here. And I was first in LA. I was there in music management, and then in New York for about nearly 20 years of that has been in New York. But and it's weird. I've traveled by virtue of being on tour. I've traveled everywhere, but really seen very little. Because you're always either in a venue or a bus. So I've been everywhere, but I've only really scratched the surface of this country, and I need to explore that, especially now I have a young daughter, and I want to be able to do this with her and have this literal journey with her.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like we went out to southern Utah and Moab and Mount Zion, and I know you forget how beautiful the locations are here in the United States as well. But you also got to you were there pretty early on at Cobalt, right?
I was US employee number 3.
Oh, there you go. So
when I was working at a Starbucks.
that was a heck of a ride, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had so much fun there. And I have to say, it was I never expected to be a publisher. I was firmly in management, but I think I took the best bits of being a manager into my publishing role and drew on that experience. So you kind of become quasi managers in a way to all these people and whatever they're working on or the projects they're working on, and help elevate in like an all ships rise kind of approach. So I feel that now in my new role at the Music Management Forum US, that I can pull from all of those experiences. But yeah, I started in a recording studio.
Oh, there you go.
And yeah, I was lucky enough to get references from Seal and George Michael when I showed up in America. So I had all these people want to interview me.
That's a pretty good reference.
Yeah, it's like, who are you? So that was fun times. So do you feel that if the pandemic hadn't happened, you would have taken this journey with Songfest? Did one lead into the other? You're like, I'm frustrated, I need something to do. Was it just a pure fluke of timing that you were launching around that time?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was a combination of things. That the technology company that I had started with a group of other folks was put on hold in essence during the pandemic. So it was a food truck scheduling company for like office spaces. Like so if you run an office building and you want food trucks to come out, I was the CTO and COO that created all the technology to schedule that and manage that. So when the pandemic hit, all that stopped. Nobody wanted to eat from food trucks anymore for some reason, or go to the office. So
anywhere, get their home.
Yeah, and I had always continued to do kind of private catalog sales and evaluations and things like that, and it just became an outpouring of folks that wanted to sell their catalogs, and so I started the Songfest website. Even though it was still there, I started putting auctions back up and got back into the business through 2020. And then it became big enough that I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I should revisit this idea of song shares. And so in 2021, went ahead and raised some capital, got some great investors together, raised some capital, and submitted to the SEC for song shares. And so that was kind of the culmination, or how it started and then culminated in 2020 and 2021. And now it's like a brand new company again, because nobody knows what song shares are and how do you reach the audience. And we have the same issue that we had back when Songfest originally was around. We have a lot of songwriters still trying to convince artists that it's a good idea to participate. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're trying to figure out, right? Is the whole, this whole combination between fans and artists, and what does that mean? Because if you look at kind of the continuum over time, it was, when you went to the record store, there really was no connection at all. Okay, I'd go to a concert, but there was no connection there. And then all of a sudden you could do things like, meet and greets. Okay, well now the fan is getting a little bit closer to the artist. And then Kickstarter came along, and now, fans are, somewhat funding new albums and new works and getting additional perks. So this convergence, it's been getting closer and closer. And then, Patreon came along, and Twitch, and now fans can like donate and contribute. then the pandemic happened, and now we're live streaming and, doing very personal kind of things. And so for me, that's like the perfect storm of where we started with Original Songfest and where we want to be. And that is that, how can you get the fan and the artist the closest possible? And that's to share in the ownership, not necessarily sharing the ownership of the copyright, but sharing that ownership of the royalty, so that I liken it to like now the fan, the artist, the label, the songwriters are all in the same ship, rowing together. And we've never had that before. And the thesis that we want to play out is, what does it mean to be an invested fan? Like, we know what it means to be an Uber fan. We know how much merch they're going to buy. We know what they're going to upsell to in concerts. We know they're going to consume music. But what can you do with an invested fan? Well, an invested fan now potentially has a life of copyright relationship with you, even though maybe they bought a song that was one of the first songs off the first album. And so how can an artist engage that invested fan to say, help them promote music? When they go on tour, it's not just that they're going to upsell, to a certain level, but they're going to bring their friends because they're like, hey, I own a piece of this song in this band and they've got new music. So, I'm going to get everyone to come out to the concert. When they produce new music and put it out, I'm going to make sure that all my friends know about it and that I put it on as many playlists as possible. So I think the next piece of evolution is, what does it mean to have someone who's invested in music, and does it move the needle? Like can we engage enough of those people to make a difference, or is it just going to be, oh, okay, great, they own a piece of the song, we really can't do anything for them? So that's what we're real excited to figure out is to get those artists. With a songwriter, it makes sense that I go, okay, I want to sell my catalog. With an artist, it may not be that, I'm doing this necessarily for the money, but I'm doing it for the fan engagement piece. I'm doing it because I can connect with that audience. What we would like to see, of course, is, that part of any new artist or part of any, artist that's going out and touring, that they do this, they IPO some of their songs, because that just builds that community and makes them even closer. So that's kind of the evolution that we see.
Well, it's really, that's one of such a big, it's wonderful when you're established, but if you're starting out or you're on your journey, getting to that point where to just connectment with your fans is you've kind of created this bridge for that to now exist in a real easy, simple way. And an invested fan, literally, they're investing in their artists that they love and want to help. And that's just great that you've created this space. Is there a certain level at which an artist need, or it's obviously more of a combination of the writer and artist, ideally in one thing, to talk with you, to talk to Songfest? Do they need to be at a certain place, or do you specialize in genres? What criteria is there?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's a genre for us for song shares. Now, this is different than if you're selling your catalog, right? Because you can sell your catalog just as a whole, in the normal auction marketplace, or you can sell it through this fractional side, right? But where we see the real value, we think, is when the artist or label is involved. And I think the key that we're learning is you have to have an engaged fan base. Like, this is not for an artist that's starting out and they don't have those fans, because that's who you're trying to engage. It's not that you're not going to have crossover as we grow our platform and people go, oh, I don't know that artist, but I'm going to go ahead and buy some of those shares. It really has to be an artist that is probably touring and already knows like how much merch their fans buy and what kind of ticket sales they have. Because if we're selling a song share for, say, $100 or $200, and you already have fans that are paying $20, or if it's a larger band, upwards of $100 or $200 or $300 for a ticket, then you go, okay, well, if they'll buy a ticket, then certainly wouldn't you think that they would want to own a piece of a song. I mean, that's certainly to me a little bit better than just going to a concert. So yes, that's what we would see as kind of a baseline, is that you need to have an audience that you can engage. And it doesn't, and the other thing that's interesting is it doesn't have to be that you're making a lot of money on your streaming, right? I mean, you could be a mid-tier level band that's tonning it, touring, but they're not getting a lot of streaming income from some of their top songs. That's fine, because then the multiple that they might be selling, and maybe they carve out 10% or 20%, the multiple that they might get on that might be a 30 or 40 or 50 or 100, right? Because there just isn't a lot of streaming there. It's the concept of, again, I'm owning a piece of something, not how much is that going to necessarily pay me back.
It's the emotional contact of actually owning a piece of something that just is part of you. I mean, whether it's a song or an artist, whatever your emotional connect with is just great. Now, people can pick and choose I mean, they don't have to come in. You're right. It can be just a single song. It doesn't have to be like an entire catalog. You can really pick or choose what it is that you want to have in this space, right?
Yeah, for sure. So there's 100% flexibility of what people can monetize or put up as song shares. You can carve out just streaming, not touch your sync if you're making money on sync. As long as there's a letter of direction that can be assigned, then they can go ahead and do it. So and the bar is a lot lower, just from because you're not necessarily like say a hypnosis or primary wave, where they actually want to have as much ownership as possible. We don't care so much about the ownership. We just care about the being able to do a letter of direction and touch that royalty stream for fans. So it's a lot lower bar from a legal due diligence standpoint and everything else.
So you sell or you have people who come on board. It's like, I want to put a certain amount of money towards this song. They get, I mean, is this blockchain, or what is it that they're getting? Is there a certificate? What do they get? Or does it vary depending on what the artist wants to do?
Yeah, so you can hearken this back a little bit to like the Kickstarter days, where you can have different perks for different levels that you might want to offer your particular fans, right? So it's very flexible if the artist is involved on what they might want to include. If they wanted to do different tiers, and I'm forgetting the band now that just did, for example, like they sold golden tickets, right? That were associated with the band. So you can do all kinds of things like that, including, providing an NFT as part of it. Not as it can never be connected to the security per se, but you can add stuff like that as a perk for the security when someone buys it. We also think that we've had a lot of artists that we've been chatting with, saying that they would love to do different kind of merch that are associated only with people that purchase, a song share, because everyone wants that, that gold record to hang on the wall behind you, right? So you can upgrade to get things like that. Again, that the artists can participate in those revenue streams, so that folks can represent what they have. Maybe they're wearing certain T-shirts at concerts and things like that. So it's really interesting to see how artists are looking at this, which is a little bit different than we might look at it just from an investment perspective.
So there could be, if they're choosing, a physical component or an experiential component to this beyond the actual investment into the song itself.
For sure. We think there's definitely a whole merch side of the physical representation of what it means to be an invested fan for a particular artist. And again, that kind of club, and it really is like a club, can be different per artist, right? And even for a record label, we've chatted with several record labels, and record labels have millions and millions of dollars in unrecouped advances that they've provided. And this is such a great way for a label to say, okay, well, we're going to carve off 5 or 10%, sell it to invested fans, and not only recoup all that money that we've advanced, but then you can recoup the artist so that the artist can start generating royalties again. So there's all these different kind of ways that you can utilize a platform like this. And I'm sure there's ones that we haven't even thought about. So it's just, it's a lot of fun to kind of be in this space, and you know, you can see all the stuff that's going on with NFTs and blockchain, and you know, I mean, we can represent our purchases on the blockchain, but the SEC is not there yet to say things like, oh, okay, the NFT is the leader. The NFT is going to, you know, if you buy this NFT, then you get to collect these royalties. And if you sell that to someone else, then all of that goes with it. Like the SEC is not there yet to allow that to happen. You still have to be the security, and that's what you're buying and selling. But, you know, hopefully soon, things like that will happen. I mean, there definitely is an opportunity for a wholesale change in how, just because we have to deal with this every day, right? I mean, how the rights move from one person to the next, whether it's a songwriter, a producer, or someone who owns those masters. You know, it's just the wild, wild west of, you know, everyone kind of has their own version, their own general ledger of who owns what. And there is no central ledger. You know, one of the things that we always tried to push before the Music Modernization Act, you know, was trying to build that consensus, because, you know, ASCAP and BMI didn't talk to each other. You know, you look at the income statements that come internationally, and you're like, you know, they're like, how are you paying me on this? Because it's not even a song that I have, or, you know, it's not even listed correctly. So looking at the data is just a horrible mishmash of trying to account for the royalties and where they're coming from.
Yeah, it really does feel like the Wild West. It's like, oh my God. And quite honestly, artists have, and their managers, looking from that point of view, they have so many options and so many choices, and knowing what's right for your artist to engage, and the best way in which to do that is such a challenge.
Oh, I mean,
and it's like a tsunami of information. So not only are you up against a whole host of new releases at any given time, as well as obviously, you know, known artists. It's just it's the sheer volume of music, plus the sheer volume of ways in which to do this. And there could be so many right ways in which to do it. And it's so unique for each person. You have to try so much.
Yeah, I mean, stuff that just amazes me, right, is like, we have big time producers that we deal with, and we look at their songs, and sometimes they haven't even registered, you know, at say, for example, a PRO. They haven't registered, you know, for the collective. They haven't registered what they need to for Sound Exchange. They don't know if they're self-published, that not only can they register as an artist, but they can register as the label, you know, the rights holder. You know, it is so, you know, and I wish there was a place that, and I'm sure there are, like maybe you can go to Song Trust and things like that, but for people to be able to go and just at kind of a one-stop shop and say, okay, we're going to make sure you're registered, you know, for neighboring rights. And by the way, what are neighboring rights? And, you know, how, you know, so it's just, there's so much money to me being left on the table. And same way with their co-publishing, you know, where you'll look at songs in the databases of ASCAP and BMI and stuff now, and it'll say like, oh, well, 25% is just not like missing, like, because no one has registered it yet, you know, and that's just money sitting there. So yeah,
I remember doing deals at Cobalt, and people would sign them, and then they would call us. It's like, where's our money? It's like, you haven't registered. Just by signing it doesn't mean that we know what the heck you've got. We're not. We can't mind read. You have to tell us what you have.
Not clairvoyant.
Everything else, we can't. This isn't telepathy. You have to represent what you own, and we will then go get it for you. I heard something the other day that the MLC has like $50 million unclaimed money, which,
I have no doubt.
That's just people who don't realize that they're putting things out and they're not realizing it's like, well, that generated money and you have to go get it.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I mean, and Sound Exchange went through that as well, right? When it first started. And I'm sure they probably still have a big black box of money that's just sitting there. If I were to wave a magic wand on anything, and this is like one of the things that I try and promote with everyone that I talk to, is that, you can have the collaborative, but, also, something that would facilitate assignments of ownership across, all organizations, like there's a standard, so if we're doing songwriter share, for example, and it's touching, or songwriter share and publishing, and it's touching ASCAP and it's touching Sony, and, just because right now it's so ad hoc to move those kind of rights around. And you also, if you're dealing with a label, they may just not do it. We had a major label that's just like, oh, this is producer share. Yeah, no, we don't want to do the assignment for you. And it's really sad because that particular producer, is trying to get their estate in order. And part of that is trying to, again, sell their rights to this particular group of songs. And the major label's just like, no, we're not going to do it. And to have folks like that hold other folks hostage is very frustrating.
Yeah, and yeah, it's so wrong to be able to hold somebody else up in their life in that fashion.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sad part of our industry. So what do you? Should we take some questions? I'm sorry. I was busy talking to you.
I was just looking to see if there was anything that popped up.
Tom, are there any that you really wanted to highlight to us?
Yeah, there was one earlier asking about the ability to essentially convert these to NFTs. If you all want to address that for a moment, how similar is this to NFTs, and is it similar?
Yeah, so I can address that. That the issue around NFTs is that they can't, and whether people do this or not, I mean, that's up to them. But from our legal's perspective, you cannot attach an NFT to a security where the NFT is in the lead, right? And in fact, you really can't attach them at all, because as soon as you do, then meaning if you have an NFT and you say, oh, if you buy this NFT, you're going to get a percentage of royalties, so that would be a security, which means you need to be a licensed, it needs to be a licensed security. So those things can't happen. Like on our side, what we can do is we can say, well, we can give you an NFT, or if you buy an NFT, you can be given some royalty rights, as long as those royalty rights are securitized, again, by the SEC. But you can't have one without the other. I mean, you have to have a true security that has gone through the SEC qualification and in some form or fashion, because as soon as you take a royalty stream and you split that up into multiple pieces, then that's, there's this thing in the SEC called the Howie Test. And the Howie Test determines whether something is a security or not. And so, we've spent years and years and tons of legal dollars to see if there's a way to get around that, and there isn't. So you can't have the NFT, you can't have royalties attached to the NFT if there's no security involved. But NFTs in itself are, I think they're great. I mean, it's a digital representation. I liken it to, you have an original piece of art, and then you've got numbered signed prints. And the NFT to me is the numbered signed print, and just in the art world, number one is worth more than number 100. So I love the concept of NFTs. And at some point, if the securities laws change, And we can really use blockchain technology to be the framework for creating securities and buying and selling securities. Like that's awesome. It's a panacea, but it's not available right now.
What now that we're starting to, God willing, and enter life again, in by going to things in real life and everything, what are you most hopeful for? What are you looking forward to the most?
I think for me, it's the thesis that needs to be panned out is like, what does it mean to be an invested fan? Like can artists really engage them to do something? And that's probably the most exciting thing for me to see, and to see what blooms out of that. Like, can there be a community of invested fans? Like if you go to the concert and you go, hey, here's the invested fan, the song best place for people to go and mingle and talk about things. And just as people used to buy and sell trading cards, having that same kind of thing where, hey, here's all the different songs that I've invested in, and some of these are going up and going down. And is there an opportunity at some point to utilize a platform like this for new artists and new songs, where people are not all, they're investing in new artists, and our platform's not ready for that yet, just because I think that whether it's our platform or other platforms need to get more ubiquitous in the world. But like that would be super exciting, like to see if things like that could happen, because everyone, what was it? Downtown just announced like a $200 million fund to invest in artists and music. And again, having fans to be able to help that and nurture that, so it doesn't have to be, one big investment company, that it can be kind of that crowd-funded engagement. Like all of that would be super cool to see at some point.
It's almost like you're creating an invested street team. We all hear this, your fans and their, and that's really the difference between an artist making it or not. I mean, it's that passion that their fans have and how they can go beyond that and actually be this invested fan and go, and really be part of their not just fan club, but part of their existence and community.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we think. We want to see that actually work in action, and we're very early on. But that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Were there any other questions that you saw that people?
I've got one. Sharon, can you reveal, perhaps without revealing confidential or proprietary information, maybe one of your greatest successes? Is there an artist that has made a lot of money doing this recently that you can share?
So we're still too new. We've got the really still more songwriter share that we're trying out from the song share piece, the securitized side. So I wouldn't say that we have any successes there yet, because we're just now starting to launch that. But the biggest success ever, was Michael Sweet. I hearken back to the Striper days of the original Song Best. We had I had a guy that drove a ferry in Sweden, and I think he probably bought a $10,000 piece of one of those songs, if I remember correctly, because it was a long time ago. But that's the success, right? That's where we need to get to. And we have not had an artist per se on the platform yet that has that kind of fan engagement. So once we do, then that'll be the next test, is to say, okay, whether it's a mid-level artist, whether that's that C+ artist or up to an A- artist, how can we test this model with a fan base, an active fan base, and see what the success is like. So we're still waiting for that artist to show that kind of success, or that artist to be on the platform so we can test that.
Charlie Glaze has asked a question. Where do you go to find out about these investing options? Is this as simple as going to your website?
Yeah, that's just songvest.com. Easy peasy.
Got it. Okay.
Go on.
Sharon, we're getting close to wrapping up time.
Okay.
I like to do a lightning round for both of you. What was the very first concert you ever went to?
Def Leppard.
No kidding.
It's fantastic.
How old were you? How old were you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I would have been 17.
Strong first show. How about you, Sean?
Mine was a little bit more kooky. Mine was Styx, the Roboto tour.
How old were you?
I don't think we drove yet, so it must have been maybe like 15.
Yeah.
And that was so interesting because I don't know if you remember, but the Roboto tour was almost like a little bit of a rock opera. So it wasn't just a concert; it was like this whole Roboto theme that was playing out on stage. So that was super cool.
And what was the first record you ever bought with your own money?
I think I was really, really young and it was a Muppets album.
I love it. That's a great one. Sean, how about you? What was the first record you bought with your very own money?
I am pretty sure it was Le Freak by
Nice.
Chic. What was it?
Classy
Chic,
song.
Le Freak? Yeah.
No Muppets there.
No Muppets, baby. I was freaking out.
Sharon goes from Muppets to Def Leppard. Wow, what a
Made a self-stop for
transformation.
that.
Well,
I
listen,
grew up in the middle of nowhere in England.
well, listen, I want to thank you all for both today. This has been magnificent. Sharon, you are such a pro at conducting an interview. And Sean, this has been magnificent just hearing your story. I told the audience at the outset they would leave today more inspired and smarter than they arrived. I think we've delivered on that promise. And so thank you to both of you for doing that. And to the audience, thank you for your continued attention here. We appreciate it very much. We're taking next week off because of South by Southwest. We'll be back after that. And also take note that Who Knew the live event returns to Nashville City Winery on March 30th, where we celebrate Women Who Rock. It is Women's History Month after all. So with that, I want to sign off and simply say thanks to everyone. Please get a shot, be nice to each other, and go Heels.
Definitely. Thanks so much.
Thank you for inviting us. We really appreciate it.